intros. Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is Geraldine Orozco. Geraldine is the founder of Bay Area Meditation and Space Meditation Studio in San Francisco, California. She is also an international speaker, radio host, pranic, quantum and shamanic energy healer, Akashic Intuitive, meditation expert, collective trauma researcher, and archetypal social theorist. She is currently working on her first book on DNA origins in the Hybridization and Ascension Program. Geraldine, welcome to the show.
Welcome, Geraldine.
Hi, Jerry. Hi, Nish. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, this is indeed a great pleasure. And it was pretty short notice as well. So thank you for making that happen, because you are clearly a busy woman.
Thank you so much. I think we tried to do this once before and had some very interesting things come up. So I'm so happy to be able to speak with you guys today.
The gods were trying to keep us apart.
I know.
All right, let's get into it. So tell us about the world you grew up in. And this just is anything that sticks as far back as you can remember is best. And the stuff that really sticks out now, which would include anything in the pop culture, your relationship with nature, just that general overview of young Geraldine.
Sure. Well, I was blessed with a really amazing family. Both my parents are very spiritual, very into, discovering and free will and connecting with nature and finding your own path. And it's kind of always been that way since I was a child. I think at first I was very much a girly girl with Barbie phase, and then I got into a little bit of a tomboy phase where I really loved nature and hanging out with the boys in the block, I guess you could say. And yeah, I just grew up with a very, very beautiful, complete, and wholesome childhood with my both parents. And, we always had the option of exploring different cultures, different arts, very much art-minded and culture-minded family. I grew up playing the violin for 16 years in the San Francisco Youth Orchestra and the OSAC. And, childhood was very, very much about education and culture and exploration of the arts, I guess you could say. So later on, I went into college and I studied interior and architectural design and then started my life, which, looking back now, as we'll go into my story a little bit, there was a lot of parallels and very interesting things that I realized, later on, looking back at my childhood. And we can go into that because it has to do with contact and how my lifelong abductee experiences paralleled my regular life, I guess you can say.
Well, this is excellent. And it is something I definitely want to get into in this program, because we like to traverse states of consciousness. And surely these abduction experiences are pushing our ideas of what that is now, thankfully, because it's deepening the actual process. And I think it's giving people an idea of how it can unfold and unlocking memories within people that really were shut down to the idea without knowing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So back when you're young, you were, it sounds idyllic, by the way. I want to live your early life. Your wonderful parents. It's all art. It sounds wonderful. So they were spiritual. So you had no religion or anything going on?
Well, from my mother's family side, we were raised Catholic in a sense. That was the the basis of everything, I suppose. But my parents were always exploring different cultures, different religions, and always moved really quickly through understanding and learning new schools of thought, I guess you could say. So, I mean, we had a Buddhist phase, we had a Zen phase, we had a, even a Sufism phase, a Gnostic phase. So we grew up very richly, literally experiencing all of these religions and cultures and hearing my parents talk about it. And I think that really opened us into this world of Eastern religion, of new, more modern thought, I guess.
Hmm.
And even though my extended family is mostly based in Catholicism, I went to an all girls Catholic school during high school. So, we went back to the roots and we kind of came in and out of some of these things to kind of see. And really, now looking back, I realize that all of this was a part of my journey to understand religion and our perception, our reality, and the structures of reality. I mean, without that, I don't think I could have ever been able to speak on behalf of religion or, how it would affect us in our belief system. So, yeah, it was very interesting.
Absolutely. This is open-mindedness at its best. This is what I mean when I look at people in the world. I am drawn to people that are broad-minded and open, and to get it, to give this gift to your kids is just it is wonderful. And so you were born in the Bay Area?
Yes, Union City, right here, born and raised.
Oh, excellent. Of course, one of the most open areas as well. This is fantastic. Was there anything in pop culture that you super enjoy, like guilty pleasures, cartoons, any of that stuff?
You know, um, before I really had my serious awakening, for me, music and dancing was always something that I loved. Always very much into the arts, into expression. I used to sing professionally for my school. I used to play the violin, and I used to do art, artwork. But aside from that, I would have to say I've always been a little bit of someone that's trying to get away from mainstream. And
Yeah, yeah.
I think early on in my 20s, I loved to go dancing, and I could dance all night and listen to music, and that was part of my youth, which I enjoyed very much. But yeah, I guess it's all part of growing and experiencing this matrix.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
What was your so back to young you, very young you. Do
Mhm.
you have any memories of being were you dreaming a lot? Do you have memories of having a lot of dreams as a I'm talking young as you can muster, thinking back.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think and the dreams were actually one of the biggest things that helped me understand my contact. As a child, my dreams were extremely impactful in that I would always have, there were these three main dreams that I would have, one of which was a very long consecutive dream over the lifespan of years. I mean, when I was 1 year old, I would start the dream. When I was, later on, when I was about 4, 5, 7, 12, I would continue the dream. I would always come back to the same place and I would remember exactly where I left off and I would continue the storyline. The second very memorable dream was a dream of being inside of a space that was moving so drastically powerful that I felt very helpless and very like being pulled into some kind of vortex of some sort. And I've had that dream multiple times. I mean, it came to the point where I was afraid of falling asleep. And of course, later I realized that that was a very common dream that contactees have. And I'm sure in psychology realm that has other connotations as well. And the third dream was a dream which is still till now is very much aware that I'm dreaming. I mean, extremely aware that, you come into this dream, you're getting shot with a gun, and I'm holding the bullet. And this is
Mhm.
something that happened before movies like The Matrix came out, before all these cool movies. Like, I would have these very strange dreams where I would be able to move time and space in them. So, yeah, I definitely would say so.
Can we talk about these 3 dreams in a little more detail?
Yeah.
Let's start with the first one, the one that helped you realize that it was contact.
Mhm, mhm. Yes, and so what seems to be happening, so these kinds of dreams, they filter and screen any kind of image, really. I mean, they can make you look at anything. They can even make you dream about your family members, which has happened many times. And for example, there was a dream where my mother would always come to me from this brilliant white light, bringing a little girl with blonde hair. And as she approached me, I would look at the child, and as a child, I was excited. I was saying, "Oh, maybe I'm going to have a little baby sister pretty soon, or maybe that's my
Hmm.
child for the future." But then later on, when I had my contact experience in 2013, I met that child on the ship as one of my hybrid children. So, the recognition and recognizing that child and the connection with the child was really emotionally impactful at that point. And I realized that this was something that was a recurring dream throughout my childhood, whether that was a, premonition of what was going to happen, or maybe like a coming back in time to what was occurring. I'm not sure. But the other interesting thing,
We stopped there for a minute. How old were
yeah,
you when you first had that dream?
gonna say around 5 years old, which is actually
Okay.
where I began my first, implantation. My first abduction experience was when I was 5 years old.
Okay.
And the reason why I remember that is because the day that I had this dream, it was my birthday, my fifth birthday.
Oh, that's significant.
Yeah, so, and it's interesting because I would go back after my regressions and look at these things that came up, and I was like, wow, amazing how these are the memories that really stuck out to me. These are the things that I can actually say that I can easily go back to and relive. So I guess that tells you something. The mind is connecting and maybe very vividly filing these memories in the system somehow. And unless we're made aware, maybe we don't realize the importance of them. So it's interesting. Yeah.
I agree. And how long did this one continue, or does it continue still?
No, this was something that was probably stopped dreaming about that, I don't know, when I was about maybe 18 years old. But it was a reoccurring dream that would happen every now and again. And it would always be my mother or the child showing up randomly inside of a dream. And that's how I realized that the screening effects that they do, they can make you look like you're at a shopping mall or in a park or anywhere. They
Yes.
create this setting, and then they make you live through these experiences of meeting, I suppose, these hybrid children, or having these certain experiences which are part of a hybridization program, that they're inserting in your mind. And all of this is created in order to create an emotional setting, I think, for what they're planning on doing. So,
Hmm. I find the synchronicity of this is amazing, because
mhm,
I'm
mhm.
just recently going through some weird dream
Really.
memories that are
Mhm.
clearly memories being wiped, and within the dreams I see the wipe happening,
There you
and
go.
it's
Mhm.
fading in and out. So this is all kind of new territory for me and significant. And the main one, it involves this little baby that was very bluish
Wow.
white, super, super, super pale.
That's a synchro for me.
Wow,
Because
really.
last night, when we were doing the show last night, we were talking about blue people and how if you take too much colloidal silver, you turn blue.
Oh,
Although there are only two people on record that took, because I've been taking colloidal silver for years.
I know. Still, it's
It's
just
those two people. It's
how often
hilarious.
does blue people come up?
Yeah, true, true. I mean, I even, one of my recent personal videos, music videos I made, I accidentally turned myself blue, and I didn't understand what that meant. Now it's coming together. So, all right, moving on to this next. So that was the first one that goes from 5 to 18. It's significant with the emergence of this child, with the idea of the dream wipe or cover up. Then we moved to the second side, one that was more, a little bit scary. I think I wrote down here,
mhm, mhm.
inside of something moving.
Yeah, that was an interesting one. And so, what the dream would consist of, and the setting would change every time. It would be something different. But for example, it would be a massively gigantic blanket. And I am walking inside of this blanket, and it's so massive that any minute it could swallow and suffocate me. But it was this feeling of being completely helpless inside of this blanket, and feeling like I'm being pull into a vortex within the blanket somewhere. And sometimes it would be a blanket, sometimes it would be like little hills of green, or sometimes it would be, I don't know, just like candy, or just a color of some sort, or bubbles. These are all childhood dreams. So, but what was impactful is the sensation that you're feeling, that you first feel like you're falling, and then you feel like you're coming into this vortex, which you cannot get out of. And what I found out, because I'm hosting these support groups, and also with over the last couple of years of meeting other contactees, we've been talking about this, and it seems to be something that is quite prevalent in contactees, where they have these dreams that they are being pulled into vortexes. They have these dreams of being falling. And of course, we know with lucid dreaming that that's also a very common physical, I guess, reaction, that you feel that you're falling. You have the sensation of falling as your body is leaving from the physical. So
Yes.
it's very interesting. Yeah. And so I guess the question is, like, what exactly is happening between mind and body during dream time, that we're trying, that, is this fabricated, or is this something that our psychology is like fabricating for us as we're experiencing these things? It's interesting.
How old were you when this was going on, this particular blanket one?
Yeah, so these were very young. I mean, I think the earliest was literally 1.5, 2, 3, and then later on 7, 8, 9. And I think the last time I had a dream like that was probably around 12 years old, I'd have to say.
Okay.
So it's pretty much all my childhood. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how clear that stuff can be,
Yes.
through this illusion of time. Did you ever, so every one of them had this fear to it, of
Yes.
those?
I don't know if it was necessarily fear. It's just this feeling of, well, of course it's fear, but feeling of like helplessness, of just being completely out of control, not able
Mhm.
to control your surroundings. That was the thing. That
Okay.
was prevalent. Yeah.
That's good. And then this third one,
Yeah.
where
So
it was a clear, like, I think, is this a clear abduction dream?
yeah, the clear one is really about how I used to read when I was a child books on lucid dreaming when I was about 10, 12. I don't know why. I was absolutely fascinated with the topic. And you know, I guess I started to lucid dream more and more. And as I did that, I became very aware that I was dreaming in my dreams. And even now that I have gone into deeper awakenings, I guess, over the past 3, 4 years, I can literally control in my dreams what's occurring. And I understand that, these are actual dimensional planes in which I am traversing here. So, whether I am healing somebody on another dimension, or I'm actually going into other escapes where other aspects of myself are integrated in, this is kind of how it is. And so by the time I wake up in the morning, I've had all of these experiences, and I understand that things have moved. And this is kind of the thing that I focus on helping people learn and trying to train, is that we start to become very, very conscious, not just on a physical plane, but also in many dimensions, which is really, really important. I think it's part of
Mhm.
the technology of our body that we're here to learn about.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and that's part of what, uh, in our own way, we're trying to show as well with
Mhm.
this program.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so, and then just on some nuts and bolts of dreaming for you, which you've already given us a lot, but just to iron them out, how does the dreamscape in general appear to you? And so what I'm looking for is just like the mundane stuff. Color, black and white. Do you have a sense of smell? Are you able to read these kinds of things?
Oh, yeah. My dreams are so ridiculously vivid that I can tell you the color of the flowers on the print of a wall, or the tiny little detail of I don't know, the architecture of some building or some painting. I mean, it's like being on another dimension of reality. It's extremely vivid. I can smell, sense, feel, and I can even do energy work in that time. So I can manipulate my energetic space on Dreamscape. And all that's changed. Now it's more vivid than ever. But
Mhm.
yes, very much. very colorful, very bright, and very real.
And in this nuts and boltsy kind of section, where does so it sounds like early on too, you would go lucid, like you just
Mm.
naturally had this ability,
Mm.
it
Yes.
seems. And so my question's a little bit, I'd say, I don't usually ask this, but I think it's more pointed to the idea that you actually have these early memories of contact. And do you think that all that is part of what aided you in having such high lucidity within the dream state?
Did it help me have lucidity? I believe that actually what helped me have more lucidity now. See, I had it when I was a child, and then after a while, in my later teen years and adolescence, I think that I kind of pulled away from that as I was more fascinated with, three-dimensional matrix, I guess
Yes.
you could say.
The outer
And
world.
then right, and then when I came back, I think over the past 5, 6, 7 years, it has enhanced even more so. I think I'm coming back to that childhood state of, really connecting with my environment. So I'd say that, in terms of contact, regression has really helped unlock my ability to understand the difference between dimensions, how they feel, what's real, what looks more fabricated than other things. I would have to say. I'm hoping that answers the question.
Yeah, and it leads right into where I want to go with this,
Mhm.
which is, can you give us a rundown of how you experience or perceive the differences in these states of consciousness?
Yes, that's a really great question. So in reality, my what I understand and what I have seen is that we are projecting really, almost like holographically our reality here in real time between the three of us here in the audience and everyone that's here. We're kind of projecting as we go based on multiple systems of the body. Number one, of course, all of our perceptions that we have recorded, that are recorded in our system in the multidimensional body, and all of those based on multiple things, not just our immediate life here since childhood, but also patterns and information that we pull from our ancestral lineage. And the other aspect of that is what we're being projected in a structured, holographic matrix per se that we are, kind of navigating through. So, with that being said, I believe that many other dimensions are also similar to this. They all have different laws in regards to the architecture of each dimension, and each dimension will focus on certain aspects of reality, whether enhanced or less enhanced. So in dream time, the only thing that's missing is the physical three-dimensional body. We have a projection of that, but then again, this real life that we believe is real life is also a projection on some level. So, when we're working on these multiple dimensions, I think that the human body is coming in and out of multiple dimensions here in this present moment. And also when we're in dream time, when we're in meditation, when we are entering these different frequencies of dimensions of reality. So, the way to become aware of them is to really understand how the multidimensional body is communicating with each one of those dimensions at all times, really. So, how do you navigate them? I believe we have to first understand and learn the technology of our physical body here in this dimension, and then understand how, as multidimensional beings, we have the capacity of navigating other dimensions. And it's really important. And I'm not just talking about dream time, I'm even talking about when you die and you're leaving the actual physical three-dimensional realm. You're actually going into other dimensions. And so my hope is that we as a collective start to become aware of that and maybe start working and training the body, the technology to move through those. That's kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. Death is, and we'll get to the idea of death later. That's kind of where, that's when we're getting wrapping and getting ready for the question, because that's
Mhm,
where I take it. So back here in this kind of dream lucidity, alternate dimensions. area, how does one go for so because you're and I consider you an adept. And so I'm going to ask you questions if it's all right on that level. Like I'm a student and I'm coming to you for information. And so, what are some tools that can help us while, say, starting within dream time to access these covered memories? So, for those of us that have experiences where we've been wiped, are there tools where we can, without a regression in what we consider waking life,
Mhm.
just starting out in the dream, are there tools we can use?
Absolutely. And I think what has really changed for me, what has worked for me tremendously, is maintaining a very high level of awareness during my waking time. Because everything, so there's many layers to this, but everything that we are doing in waking time is somehow projected in the subconscious mind during dream time. However, um, also the human body is whatever the higher self or the purpose or whatever, there is a I guess an idealism of what this human organism is supposed to be doing in this present time is also carried out in dream time. So this can be anything, whether they're fantasies, dreams, aspirations, goals, or the highest level of expression of the human soul. When that comes into question, all of that can be and may be presented in dream time. So, what that tells us is that as we learn to train our body and our mind to become aware in our waking time, and that is like every moment of your day being conscious of what you're feeling right here, right now, where that feeling is coming from, what is triggering that emotion, where is your presence, where are your intentions, understanding and breaking down every part of your thought process. Because what happens to us is that we live in a lot of times we come into these monotonous zombie modes where we're just acting and reacting to our environment instead of understanding really where we are coming up with our own emotions. And the majority of us are pretty much just mirrors of what we're watching in the external world, like, for example, television, social media, all of these things that are telling us how we need to be, how our families, how our society needs to be. We believe all of what we're seeing, and so we are projecting that. So the problem with that, as you can see in our society, is that that's an incomplete view and oftentimes very confusing way to look at the human system. So, becoming aware of your emotions every moment of your day, questioning why you're feeling the way you're feeling. And if you train this on a daily basis every day, what you're doing there is you're starting to have this mind body connection that it starts to strengthen that mind body communication. So when you go into dream time, you're going to start doing that in dream time as well. It's like when you go swimming all day. As a child, you spent the day at the pool, and even at night when you're in bed, you have that sensation that you're swimming in bed. That's kind of like the best way I can explain it. Whatever you're training yourself during the day to do with your mind, body, and cognitive systems of the body, you're also bringing into your dream time. And of course, there's other little things that you can do, but this is the most powerful shifting thing that I have experienced personally in my life. And in my dream time, I have become very aware by doing that.
Nish. She fell asleep. I don't know.
Oh, Nish.
No, sorry. I tried to unmute and I ended up with like a whole other screen of stuff.
Sweet.
Jeez, it's the first time this ever
I
happened.
love discovering hidden features.
This
No
is just such
problem.
this is so juicy. So, okay. So back here in that using these tools in what we consider waking life to access this higher state of consciousness and what we're considering dream time is okay. So I want to tie back into a little bit of something I didn't ask a bit earlier. You already mentioned it, but I want to get it nailed down. Flying and what we consider the supernatural kind of powers in waking life.
Mhm.
how do you fly? And when you're having a high lucidity, are you able to keep up your high lucidity with things that are fantastical?
Mhm. Um, well, let's see. Now I guess my dreams are really just navigating dimensions which are quite real to me, I guess you can say. So I haven't really had any experience where things are, based on fantasy too much. And what I mean by that is that usually in dream time I'll be doing work because I'm training myself personally to clean up my own quote unquote karmic connections or contractual agreements to my physical projection here. So, in dream time, I just continue that work. Whatever I'm doing in the daytime, I do at night. And secondly, in regards to flying, for example, or moving, I mean, really, we can train the physical body to do absolutely anything we want. I think the program that we need to destroy is the program that tells us that the human body is limited, even by time, space, and physics.
Mhm.
I think we're just coming into a time where we're starting to understand, really relearn physics in a new way because we're starting to understand our multidimensionality. So, all of that is something that we are learning, we're encountering, and we see. I mean, there have been very famous sages and gurus in history that have, record of flying and moving and
Yes. Yeah.
exploding with the ability of training the mind to move within time and space. So all of that is very real, and I think we see that in our entertainment industry with this this fascination with superheroes. I think it's a kind of like a suggestion to humankind that we are all possible, we are all capable of doing those things, and hopefully to look beyond the ideas of separation and limitation of the human.
Yeah.
I think they also represent the new mythology in the
Sure.
way that the old gods held the position of mythology. These are the new gods, in a way, in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and that's great that you brought that up because it's like, we are embodying this godlike state where we are actual active co-creators of our reality. And I really hope that our society is coming into this state of being because this is where we're going to get out of that victim role of anything really that's happening around us and take control of what we're co-creating.
Just wait till people figure out that space is fake.
Oh boy, we'll have to talk about that one.
That's the woo section. Okay, so with all this, can you give us an idea of the contactee connection here now? So we got set up with these three early examples that go way back in your life, and we have an idea of where you are now. Where's the bridge, and then the kind of work you do now, and at the level in which you're doing it, both in dream time and in consciousness, which is really the same thing, right?
Mhm,
And
mhm.
how does that tie into all of this fuckery that's going on with the overlay of reality that as we were just talking about? I can't do this. I can't, I don't allow myself to fly because I can't, because this is a program, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Saying I can't do it. And so who's behind that? What's behind that?
Well, I think it's a matter of understanding the structure of this reality that we live in, and the structure of this multiverse or this organism which we are now living in. And there's many levels of reality here, and non-reality as well, projected reality.
Yes.
And I guess what we're dealing with when it comes to contact is we are all part of this holographic projection of each other within an organism that I believe has, we're talking about consciousness here, of the actions of consciousness and consciousness either becoming or not becoming. And I feel like what we live in right now in this organism is a consciousness that has decided to reject itself. And from that perspective, the manifestation of many species of ETs and other beings that are now I don't know, you can say parasitic or looking towards, feeding or living off other organisms, which in any kind of organism or state of which is based duality is always going to be the case. There's always going to be one balance that's out of balance and one that needs to be balanced with the energy of another. So that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. Our reality is built on the structure of duality, and where there is duality, we have imbalance, because what we are manifesting now in our waking life, the humans, are this what we're experiencing is a lot of influence that causes us to feel a very deep separation from the self and from what we are experiencing, and then a huge compartmentalization of our reality.
But isn't that what you just described is the purpose of the quote unquote programs, is to drive that reality and program the future?
Yes. So, well, the purpose
it's
of
like if you're not making your own future, you're letting someone else do it. If you're not,
exactly.
if you're not manifesting, someone else manifesting for you. Sorry.
No, yes, that's exactly right. And I mean, to simplify all of these concepts, that's really what it comes down to, is to really look at what part are you co-creating with. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that we live in an organism in which we are moving through this consciousness as consciousness becoming aware of itself. Each one of us is consciousness that has the ability or free will to become aware of itself. So that being said, there's going to be a lot of involvement. And the reason why it's important to understand the structure of the human body and how it plays a role in this organism is because then you're going to understand how we are tied to multiple dimensions and how we connect with our ET counterparts and how we are, playing these roles of information with them. When it comes to ET contact, we're talking about consciousness, pure consciousness being replicated or taken and used to multiply information as embodied within hybridization program, like hybrid children, for example, which is taking your biological matter and then creating other children in order to multiply that information. And when you multiply, when you take that information, you are also opening channels, direct channels to the information that you're holding. So it's my belief that at this point, we are really, each one of us are like a cocktail of DNA, of information that we have traversed through this organism multiple times, I guess, since the very origin of our existence. So the thing is, how can we become aware of what's occurring here and how to become consciousness that is leaving this organism per se, or maybe experiencing other aspects of reality.
Is it possible, say, for people just becoming familiar with this content, with this concept, because that's probably where it is for a lot of people, as concept first, to use the dream time in a way that, so maybe not so actively as far as going into tonight's dream and saying I'd like to see through to the true, but in retrospect, reviewing some dreams that may have seemed very significant to you, that are mysterious, and starting to decode those in a different way that involves all of this other stuff where we're talking about the otherness, contact, and others besides us.
The thing that we must understand is that everything is important. There's no, I don't believe in things that don't really matter and that are just you know meaningless, because your mind is very complex, and all of the information that is around you is being perceived through certain filters based on your experience. We are co-creating even in our dream time. We are creating those dreams, or they are being implemented, but there's a lot of exchange of information that's happening. So all dreams and all waking time is important to understand what's happening to you. You know, when you're actively working in dream time, what you are seeing, what you're experiencing can look like something completely ridiculous. It can be like little clowns playing around with balls and then you don't understand what's going on. But in reality, those are other things that are occurring on other dimensions, which we are not capable of translating or deciphering. You know, everything is vibrational, frequential information. And so, as we become aware of how our body processes this information, then we will not be able to understand what we're actually experiencing and seeing in dream time. But it's my belief that all of these things are quite important. Now, when we're talking about contact, what you'll realize is that a lot of these dreams are quite familiar. They're quite, you're going to see a lot of very commonalities in this dream. It's going to be involving, um, you know, either you're in a spaceship and you see these beings, you're experiencing these lights, your body is going through this, feeling of paralysis, and then you are waking up and you may remember some things of it or a flash of something, but then you won't know what exactly happened to you. And so other contact like the hybridization program, very, very, very typical dreams of seeing children, being with children, nurturing children, and where things become real in contact is when you wake up the next day and you have a physical, actual physical mark on your body or a reaction, like for what happened to me, for example, for many years, where after I would receive an implantation, I actually had a severe physical reaction. I ended up at the hospital with it. So every time that I would have this kind of a contact, the body would react. And even more so in the hybridization program, as having children, I would have very inconsistent cycles and miscarriages, and pregnancies that were just unaccounted for. Like I didn't have sexual activity or something for a year, and yet be pregnant. So this is when things become a little realer and they become more something that you can actually feel and understand on a physical level. So I guess there's many ways to look at these dreams. The important thing is that when we're reviewing our contact experiences, to start taking notes and writing down the experiences that you're seeing and start looking at the parallels. A lot of these dreams, when you start coming into these support groups, you're going to start hearing yourself talk through someone else. They're going to be like, oh, I had a dream, that I had this contact, or I saw this spaceship, or I saw this alien species, and, or they were having intercourse with me, or they were trying to operate on my body. So these are things that are very reoccurring. And whether they are screened images that are modified for your memory or trying to be swiped from your memory, those are things that you can look for more in regression, to try to understand what exactly is happening.
How do synchronicities play into this awakening?
Synchronicities are very interesting, and I think what we need to understand is how dimensional time and space is actually occurring in our reality. We come from the idea that time is linear. First we think that because we're raised on the concept that we have life, death, and everything in between is gonna pass and we won't return to that experience, and then we die. There's nothing else. Some people think there's a reincarnation, some people think there's an afterlife. But our concept of time and space has to change. Why? Because what's really occurring is that in this dimensional reality, right here, right now, in the present moment, we're moving in and out of dimensional timelines, multiple dimensional timelines. As a matter of fact, our intention is constantly moving us through these timelines. And even our thoughts and our other aspects of ourselves are also have the ability to be creating on other dimensional realities. For example, if right now I'm talking to you, but part of me has some kind of vision of being in a terrible car crash and pulls me out of this present moment into that terrorizing emotional thought, on some dimension, I am co-creating that reality. Now, what's happening is that that is a vibrational imprint that is somewhere within my system. So synchronicities, for example, as we're moving through all of these timelines and possibilities, we're also reliving certain experiences because the organism of the human body has reincarnated several times in these dimensional timelines, and we're doing so here and now. We're living out multiple quote unquote incarnations, which are actually dimensional realities that we're accessing simultaneously. And I believe that's why regression works, because regression takes you back to what looks like something in the, I don't know, ancient Egypt or ancient Rome. But in reality, those are aspects of ourselves that are accessing those timelines, which are a part of us, very much so.
And that actually anchors us, I think, to those timelines, that the remembrance of it, because there's energy exchange between it, and those kind of tie you to those timelines and keep them in your current one. It's
Absolutely.
like, I think it's a cumulative thing. Like all these other timelines add up to what you're in now, in the quote unquote now.
Absolutely. That's really important because this is where this concept of DNA reprogramming started for me. Because when I understood that we're moving through these interdimensional realities constantly and we're co creating and we have the ability on some level to move and manipulate them, then that means that we can move information and energy from the body. Because what is storing all of this information here and now is your physical organism. And the physical organism is like a one giant receptor. All of that information is being stored in the system that we know as our DNA down to our molecular level. And, you know, every aspect of the body is recording every experience in life. And it's recording the experiences that we're doing in this present time and also in other dimensions. So we are incredibly complex, incredible beings. And the more we understand and the sooner we realize that, the more we're going to understand the weight of our every action, our word, and our interrelationship with this reality that we're living in. You know, and just to quickly make sure I answer the question, when we are reliving these synchronicities, it's aspects of ourselves that are recognizing certain little things within us that are playing on these multiple dimensional realities. You know, so the consciousness is recognizing itself through all of these experiences. And I think that because we're multidimensional, the higher self, or per se the higher aspect of consciousness that is attached to this physical projection, is actually in a way recognizing or helping and working with this physical projection to move through, you know, this simulation of reality that we're in. So, you know, there's a lot of things going on in the present moment. I think that we need to become aware of that. Those synchronicities are wonderful ways for us to understand and recognize where we're going and what we're doing.
How does, say, something that seems very similar to synchronicity, like the vu stuff, the deja vu and all that, fit into this this mechanism of synchronistic stuff?
Mm. Well, in that same way, I mean, I'll tell you this, with the amount, and we're going to talk about ETs a little bit here, because we're talking about species that are off planet that have a technology that's way beyond our understanding.
Mhm.
And you know, we're talking about the manipulation of time and space, the ability to screen images, experiences, feelings, take you and pull you out of dimensional reality into another dimension. This is all things that happen. And the reason why I can say that is because I have experienced it within my own contact experiences. And being able to experience and see that has allowed me to understand that our perception of technology and time is very antiquated. Like, we are not really understanding. So when we have these situations of deja vu, they can be a number of things. They can be implanted thoughts into the mind, and they can be even your own self, you know, allowing you to recognize something within what you are projecting. And, because the mind, we believe everything that we're seeing right in front of us. But because I mentioned, our mind and our body and our other aspects of our multidimensionality are operating on many, many other levels. So they are communicating with us in different ways. So things like what were you saying, deja vu, for example, is a recognition of something that you probably have already experienced, something that is highlighting something that you should pay attention to, and it's movement through these multiple dimensional timelines. So you've been there before, you've experienced that, what's a possibility, and so you recognize that experience. So I think that's what's occurring in that moment.
Yeah, and the thing that always strikes me with deja vu in particular, and one of the things that I hear consecutively over and over and over again, is how mundane deja vu is. And like you had mentioned earlier, to me, nothing is mundane really. It's just a way. It seems to be a way for people to parse out a hierarchical aspect of what's important in language. So I notice, you walk in a room, right? And that there's nothing more mundane essentially than walking in a room, but whoa, this sensation comes and hits. And for me, it's always attached to dreams I can recall from very long ago. I can always pinpoint it, but then it gets lost in I had that dream, but what was going on in the rest of the dream? Now I can't recall that. So I'm always trying to push into where it can take me.
That's amazing. And I think the thing is that it helps us kind of also see is an aspect of how we are repeating these kinds of experiences over and over again in multiple lifetimes. I mean, we can take it there because, you know, really, we may not even really recognize the room. It might be the emotional state or the experience or the premonition of what's about to happen next,
Mhm.
that we're recognizing, that our whole organism is recognizing within what we're seeing because we have cycled through that. Now, it's very real that within our DNA, we are storing traumatic experiences that we're cycling down our ancestral lineage. So, anytime that the system as a whole is recognizing these experiences through the emotional body, it can also feel like a deja vu. It can feel like a recognition of this event. So that's very interesting when you start looking at those levels of, cognition, of recognizing what's occurring here in front of you. It really helps us understand that, it's definitely something to look at, to understand what's happening there. What is the connection with this event that's happening here and my life and everything that I've experienced until that point. I don't feel like it's something that's just simply mundane, because I think it's more about the emotional reaction to the experience than the actual what you're seeing, what you're looking at.
Because the physical body is made up of such a high content of water and minerals and stuff, I view us as very crystalline.
Mhm.
And crystalline for me conjures up the idea of, programmable and conscious. It's more a matter of density, a little bit of density, right? Which brings us into the 3D. Is this, how do you see that? Or is it possible we're crystalline, more crystalline than we think, as far as this 3D reality, and as we're generators for the totality of our consciousness as it connects in with others, especially these higher vibrational uh beings that are a little bit out of our periphery that you're talking
Allegedly
about?
higher vibrational.
Yeah, or lower, but other where they're not quite in this frequency.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a beautiful concept. I mean, I think you got it right. I mean, the fact that we are mostly water, but really, our entire organism, everything is energy down to the molecular level. We are just oscillating
Yes.
to create these vibrations. And we are just that. We are that vibration. So really, the organism, the system of the body at that oscillation, and I guess it's a beautiful combination of that and the consciousness that is being communicating with this matter, this quote unquote matter that is being created in this dimensional timeline, has the ability to program, to change, to shift, to absorb, to release multiple things, at any time. So it's really incredible that we are coming into this understanding of what the multidimensional body, what the body is. The human body is first the soul, which is pure consciousness, comes into the physical body, and it works kind of like a prism. When a light shines in a prism, it fragments into that rainbow spectrum, right? And so the human body is kind of the same. It's like pure consciousness coming in through that filter, that prism, which is 3D for this current timeline. And that three-dimensional reality then organizes that information, that infinite information, into this, I guess what you can call our chakra system. The chakra system is connected to the endocrine system, which manages all of the major organs of the body. And all of those are functioning like receptors that are constantly picking up information from around us. And when I say information, we're talking about vibration, because we are vibrational beings and our environment is also all vibration. Everything, this table, this computer, everything that we are working through here is all just oscillations on different vibrational levels. So as we are correlating with our environment, everything that we are absorbing, feeling, and experiencing is all being translated and stored within that massive amount of information inside of our, within this three-dimension physical plane. It's our DNA. And the DNA is also linked to your ancestral lineage, the network that you're coming into. Your network will consist of your family, your friends, your mother, your father, all of these that you are connected to. And the interesting thing is that we are connected to them just like schools of fish, I guess you can say. We are energetically and magnetically connecting to each other depending on our frequency and our vibration. So all of our network, our family, our ancestors are all a certain particular vibrational frequency, which is in alignment with each other. And this is why I believe we are cycling through specific patterns of behavior, of trauma, of emotions, reliving these experiences through each other over and over again. This is how consciousness is reliving and experiencing this lineage of information. So each one of our family lines, me and you, all of our lineages are all a culmination of this specific vibratory information. So I guess on the planet as a whole, we are all here as consciousness becoming aware of itself through multitude of experiences on many, frequential, vibrational levels. So the body is very, very much a very complex and important recording system. And as I mentioned before, the human body is not just limited to the experiences here on this physical plane, it's the connection on other dimensions as well, whether it's our ET contacts, our past lives as ETs as well. And all of that information is all there within what we're storing here in the physical body. So, what makes this organism function is the physics of the human body as it moves, continuously oscillating this information. It is this toroidal field of energy. And it becomes the toroidal field because of the movement and the type of oscillation that we are. So I guess people kind of relate it to the crystalline body. And you can say that is a crystalline body if you're referring to the concept of this this vibrating toroidal magnetic energetic system that is each one of us, you know. So there's many aspects to the human body that we are now becoming aware of, I think.
You had said something earlier And I would like to elaborate on that. You said consciousness that has rejected itself. Could you go deeper into that?
Yeah, so we and Jerry was just saying, whether they seem to be higher frequency or not, we don't know. And that's always the question when we talk about ET contact. What are we talking about here when we're talking about extraterrestrial life forms? And really, there's many ways to look at it. But what I have seen was that our planet and our human race is a genetically modified result of three particular main lineages of DNA, or I call it information. And these main lineages are the ones that have seeded the life on this planet. And you can go back to either the Book of Gilgamesh, the story of the Book of Enoch, or the Emerald Tablets that can depict in our history, in our anthropology, in our history, even in our religion, traces of coming into the planet Earth and breeding in order to create the human race. Um, and if you look at it from that perspective, you're going to look at many different things. You're looking at the concept of fallen angels, which was depicted in our, religion and history. But if you go beyond that, what exactly is happening here in the creation of this organism that we call this, or what I call a matrix multiverse? What we're talking about here is other organisms of intelligence, of information, and why we have this interrelation with them, why we are here incarnated on this physical planet as consciousness cycling through this information, I believe, is because of this relationship that we have with these species, which in a sense can appear to be parasitic, but it's become parasitic because of the way that consciousness is being manipulated in this time and space. So each one of us is consciousness that, as it incarnates into this physical dimension, we completely are disconnected from the other higher, dimensions of ourselves, and so we don't remember, or we are not conscious of what we are or capable of being. So that is a part of this matrix that we're living in, fragmented reality, I believe. And so, these species that are here in this matrix universe, that I call it, is, I don't want to look at it as they are, this draconian or reptilian or whatever species they are that are this evil species. Even though, in my personal experience, I have seen, um, I have understood what darkness is through my connection and contact to them, because we're talking about a different vibrational frequency. They are a manifestation of lower frequency. And we will be able to understand that by how it's translated from human terms. What does low frequency mean for us? It means suffering, pain, horrific things, the destruction of humankind, the destruction of purity. That is how we perceive that low vibration, because that's what we have been programmed to perceive. Those are the filters that we are given here. But what these beings are is a low frequency. They are a manifestation of low frequency. And what that means is consciousness rejecting itself, consciousness that is not willing to become aware of itself, and therefore is parasitic, has become parasitic. Any of us that decide not to be conscious of ourselves becomes parasitic to ourselves and others. So, this is the law of the universe that we live in. It is the law of our existence. We are all consciousness, we're all infinite consciousness, but on different levels of awareness. And that provides us with a frequency, and that frequency will either put us on the scale of the higher frequency or the lower frequency. And that's really all that we all are, even these species, whether they're higher or lower, the Arcturians per se, or whatever they are. What I tend to believe is that these species, these alien species, are all all of them, a part of this matrix multiverse, whether they're high or low. What I believe that our, our opportunity is in this waking limited time of life, these maybe 100 years, is to transcend this organism of a matrix universe that we live in, to become consciousness that is infinite, beyond the manifestations of any kind of organism, whether it's high vibration, low vibration, that is still limited because it's living within the confines of this physical dimension. I feel that the human has the ability to go beyond that into infinite consciousness. So that's what I train people to do, and I try to do myself, is to break through any of these matrix manifestations of life.
Is it possible, if with one that breaks this code, unlocks the code, within this density of 3D, but accessing all of this otherness, all of the frequency, all of these dimensions, that one can maintain an extreme longevity like we see in some of the old tales, the old Chinese stuff with elders that are thousands of years old, and then Enoch speaks of them. They're around, they're in the Hindu, they're everywhere, the immortals. Yet there's something about these immortals, they're still functioning from or hold an agency within this construct.
They didn't have to eat GMOs and get chemtrailed.
Chemtrails? Those darn chemtrails.
If they even exist.
Well, yes, and I mean, really, first, I'd like to say that we are those infinite beings. We are pure consciousness. Pure consciousness never dies. It is infinite energy, and energy can never disappear. It can never disappear. It can only reallocate, basically. So all we are is a bunch of energy reallocating from one manifestation to another. That's all any of us are. Now, yes, absolutely, we have the ability to live, long and infinite lives. Now, the concept that needs to come into question in here is where do you want to live that longevity? Do you want to live it here on this third dimension? Do you want to be on a higher dimension, seventh dimension, eighth dimension? Some of these other species are already living that. But again, we keep thinking about the parameters of time and space of this planet, which is very limited. We think that, life is from 0 to 100 years old, maybe, and that's it. And we're just talking about the body with the information that we have been given. So all of that information is and should become antiquated as we come into a place of awareness and awakening. Because the human body, if you learn how to utilize the technology of the body, if you learn what the organism of the human needs to have a vital, healthy life, you start seeing the people that are living up to 120, 100 and more. It is our mind. And of course, our environment plays a role in that. But in reality, if you become the master of your body and your mind, and you are in charge of what you are co-creating, you can absolutely transcend all of these laws of this dimensional reality, because we have the ability of moving in and out of dimensions. So I strongly believe that that is a very real thing that we all have the opportunity to do. I think that as infinite beings, our job here and our suggested task is to be able to traverse all of these dimensions and to start training ourselves to work on other dimensions. And that takes us to the topic of death. What is death? And something that I've been hearing is, earlier this year, I actually had a near-death experience myself, and that's why I even dare talk about this, is that, what we're looking at death is another projection of a certain reality that's pulling you back into this reincarnation. So I guess the reason why I stress becoming conscious in other dimensions like dream time and out of body experiences is that when we die, that's exactly what happens. we do not really die. Just this physical shell that we live in is dying, and your consciousness is moving on. The question is, where is that consciousness going to go? How are you going to direct it? And what's occurring? You know, how do you navigate that realm when that comes?
And so with death and that state of consciousness, which to me is very much birth. Uh, so, and if we tie this right back into, say, dream, do when we encounter others in dreams, and this includes, say, people we know that have passed into that state, and also others that we don't know, but that are clearly not us, that obviously are driving their own boat. What's going on with those interactions? Do you have them?
You people that have passed, you mean?
Yes.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, here's the thing. You know, there are ghosts. I do believe in ghosts, but I believe in ghosts as a fractal of that soul that is attached to the physical plane. I don't believe that that is the soul of the actual being that is stuck here in this third dimension. I believe it's a projection of that the whole soul, for one thing. So for another thing, when you have dreams, it can be a number of things. I mean, it can be your own projection of this person, and I've also have had it been in my own experience, a screening memory in order to induce emotions for contact, you know, in an abduction or in a contact experience myself. um, During death, I've had the appearance of past ancestors and people that have passed. And I realized that that is a fabricated projection of my mind. You know, as I'm going through this light tunnel, I realize that it is a fabricated projection, because what happens is that the mind tries to pull towards anything that it is recognizing or it's familiar with, and it's going to create that in that tunnel, in that light tunnel that we are supposedly going through. So, you know, there's a couple topics here. I mean, there's many things here. One of them has to do with, you know, what we're co-creating, what we're projecting, what we are being told to believe in, and another thing is what's real. And the soul is moving, you know, through dimensions when it dies. So it doesn't stay behind in this physical 3D. This is nothing but a little tiny flash of light in the timeline of existence, our life here. You know, so if I have, the only time I've had dreams of a past person was for communication, and that was immediately after they passed. And I think that also our body is projecting and asking for those things or messages or confirmation when we have dreams like that as well. So it can be very much projected. It can be very much projected. And I think the other side is, you know, the manipulation of your memories is something that we have to be aware of, that that's very, very real. And especially in contact, that's something that can happen and does happen.
And that's where I would like to go next. Starting with the overlay of the grid around us, say in waking world, how things appear to be amping, say big weather events, crazy amounts of fighting and infighting, and this constant just loop of a big old ball of, I don't know, rubber bands that are all getting brittle and they're all going to snap and there's going to be a core at some point. What is this overlay? And is it being manipulated by other conscious entities?
I very much feel that there is a certain sense of manipulation. And, you know, the reason why is because we have turned into a society that's hanging on every word that we're looking through our social media, you know, looking at that. And I think what we need to do is look away from those and look at each other here in our present time to see what each of us is dealing with on an emotional level, becoming more of a connected community. Because the more that we rely on the external world to define what community and what society and what life should be, the more and the reason for this structured matrix is in order to put the human into a state of survival, in a state of fragmentation. Our entire reality right now, the way that it's been created, is to create such a deep feel of separation, isolation, and fragmentation. We see that with everything. We see that with how we look at ourselves, even with our own emotions. We see it with our sexuality. We see it with our family, our education, our colleagues, even our race, our sex, the languages that we speak, our cultures, our religion. You're going to take it out to the countries that we're living in, political issues. On every level, it's like fragmentation after fragmentation of reality. And when that happens, everything becomes very, very compartmentalized. And what that does to the human is that the human feels locked in. He feels trapped. He feels like he can't move without going through these, little, I don't know, these mazes of belief systems and these projections of reality that are being made for us. So we need to but here's why I know this, because when I was going through my awakening, I started to question everything on a really, really deep level. I mean, everything, what I was thinking, what I was feeling, why I was feeling that way. And what happened after I started going down that road is I realized that everything I'm feeling, some of these feelings, some of these emotions weren't even mine. They were things that I had been taught. They were things that I had been shown. They were things that I learned from other people. They weren't even what I really truly believed in. And I really had to take a moment to question where the heck I ended up with all of these beliefs. So when I did that, I realized that all of us are a culmination of all of these belief systems that are imposed upon us by our system. And what is the intention of these systems? What is behind that intention? If you go and you look through all of these systems that are running our reality right now, from our food system to the pharmaceutical industry to our government, our education, everything is ran and run on the backside of this by a very small group of people that are in power. Okay, and so that really made me question reality and what we're listening, what we are, who we are now. Actually, something that I speak about in my presentation is that 147 companies 147 people run the entire world. They own all of the organizations that are running our reality right now. So that's something that's very something we need to become aware of, because we need to understand what is the overall concept of life. And when we look around us, we're all not doing so good. We're all in survival mode. We're all striving, struggling. So what's happening that all of our systems are making us feel like we need to be in a state of survival? So we, as we are living our lives, we need to become aware of what part of us wants to continue believing the things that we're seeing, like pain, suffering, death, wars, all of these things.
Space.
Okay, space. You'll need to understand that one. But and it's like the question is like, what exactly is happening? Who's running the show here? Who's telling us how to feel and think? And ultimately, when we start to question that, we start to realize that we don't have to continue going down those same things. We don't have to keep contributing to these markets, to the entertainment industry, to consumerism. We can pull away from that. And then you'll realize, oh, maybe we're not in so much danger. Maybe I can survive by, having my own community that is healthy, that is flourishing. And all of a sudden, what they're telling us isn't real anymore. So there's a lot to say here. And I think that hopefully, as we're coming into this, we start to pull away from these systems that really don't have our best interest in mind.
So let's look behind the curtain a little bit at these different races.
Mm-hmm.
Could you give us, just kind of thumbnail sketches of the ones you're familiar with, and maybe what what they're doing.
Mhm. So I talked about the 147 people that are in charge of our world here. And what I have found is that their lineages are tracing through history all the way back to Mesopotamia. The same bloodlines over and over again would appear in my research over history, all the way back to the origin or the said origin of our human race on this planet. And that allowed me to see that the DNA that our systems are consisting of is a combination of human and also these extraterrestrial races, these three primary. Now, when I say primary, I'm talking about an evolution of races. The original race, the oldest race that seems to be prevalent in our matrix universe is this draconian race, which seem to be the master geneticists, the ones that are the ones carrying out these systems, I guess, of organization. I also saw an inner earth bloodline, which are architects of what you can call a matrix, and they are the ones that will work with all of the resources of any planet and create matrix based on those laws of physics, or they create everything from the structure of reality to what's going to be seen in that reality.
Are those the builder races?
Yes, I guess you can call them that. I'm not sure who came up with that term, but absolutely that's what I would refer them as, is like these, I call them architects of the matrix, basically. And they are inner earth dwellers that manage all of the natural resources and the movement of every planet and how that organism is going to move.
Are
So
they insectoid?
no, I did not see that they were insectoid, actually. I just saw that they were, I guess, a further genetic alteration from the draconian, basically. So something of a reptilian
So
sort of race.
handsome lizards.
Handsome lizard, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so
I love that handsome lizard.
handsome lizards, yeah. And the other race was a more humanoid race, which again, I believe is an evolution originating from the original race, which is the draconian race. Now, it is my belief that all races are evolving from the draconian race. We are all manifestations of genetic alteration from that original, form or structure. And so from there, the draconian they look like they're very impressive, very tall beings that are, some of them have these little wings or these kinds of protrusions on the upper side
The
of their necks.
the white vestigial wings.
Yeah, to be honest, every time that I would see them in my own personal abductions, they were very dark beings, and pretty dark greenish, grayish, blackish kind of beings. And so, yeah, and what makes them interesting is their vibration, their frequency is extremely low. I mean, I there's nothing in our reality that can match that kind of a low frequency unless you put together all the most horrible things you can ever imagine, and then you would be able to understand what that feels like. When I was a child, I was taken on this hybridization ship and then taken on to a mother ship, which was run by these draconians. And the energy is that of death. It is that of the most horrible, putrid things you can ever think of. And and again, as that's why I was telling you, it's through our human filters that we can perceive that. That's why we see it that way. It's because our human filters. Um,
Are we perhaps a food source for those on that lower density there,
well,
Energetically.
energetically?
exactly. Yeah, and that's kind of like what I was talking about earlier when I said parasitic. That's kind of what I'm talking about, because the reason why we are here reincarnating as this human race is that we are providing certain frequencies of information through our experiences on this physical plane. And as I mentioned, the majority of our physical experiences, unfortunately, are a state of stress, a state of anxiety, pain, suffering, and survival mode that we are made to be put into by a compartmentalized reality or a false reality. So I think that, we are kind of feeding these beings energetically.
So then what is the true reality? What is the original timeline? And have we been pinched off of it?
Well, and that's the thing that I really want to help people see beyond and try to pull away from the concept that we are a victim race, or we are here, as victims to these beings. All we're talking about here is consciousness, either the rejection of consciousness or consciousness becoming aware of itself. We have the ability of becoming aware of ourselves. And we have this moment in this three-dimensional reality to do that by training ourselves to become aware of how to navigate multiple dimensions. We have all the tools available to us. We have all the possibilities and impossibilities available to us to look into this. So, really it's up to us. It's really up to us how we decide to move through this. Now, even in our own matrix, we are told, and we are in a way already, we are signaled that we are in this matrix. We have all of these films that are showing us ET contact. They're showing us Illuminati movements. They're showing us so many things that are quite real, that are actually moving energetically in the background of our reality. So, and beyond movies, we have our government, our financial system, our health system, our society, our human race is a testament to what we are experiencing in this reality. So I think we need to open our eyes nice and wide and take a good look at what we're dealing with here. We can't deny what's occurring around us. And I think it's time for us to become aware of that. And the more we become conscious of our body and our mind and the ability that we have to move through these dimensions, that we do it, that we do it now.
Absolutely.
That's the thing.
I didn't mean to imply that I felt victimized by being pinched off. I was, my personal feeling is that anything I experience is something that was, there by us. Anything that we experienced was created by us to start with. So there are no victims.
Yes, thank you for clarifying. I'm so glad you feel that way because, I do come across a lot of people that do feel that way. And it's really just, if it's one thing I can get across to anyone here by doing anything, is please understand you are the most powerful biotechnology in this matrix multiverse.
Yeah, I am. Thank you.
Yes, you are, Jim.
We're definitely not of the victim mentality here at Nox.
Good. So happy to hear that. Yes, fabulous.
Yeah, we're more the freedom fighters.
All right. You're my kind of people.
So with the thumbnail sketches, though, what are the others? So we're looking at the original Draconians, and then everything kind of splinters off of that branch, that trunk. You're saying that's the original.
Yes, I believe so. I mean, it's just like the spectrum of light, right? There's different variations of frequency. So all of these will be splintered off per se in these different species. I mean, we have the humanoid species, which, we can look at the Pleiadians or, these other kind of humanoid type of species that we've had on our planet Earth in the past, in the future. And we have the insectoid, which is a branch of that as well. And we have many other species. There's the grays, which have a very wide range of species that they have evolved. There are the short grays, which seem to be more like artificial intelligence, quote unquote, artificial intelligence. And the reason why I say this is because, we are all a form of this biological intelligence on some level, but they are more like programmable robots of some sort that kind of can modify themselves in any kind of group of species. Now, something that I want to stay away from is the continued thought that all of these species, are completely separate species. Like the Draconians hang out only with Draconians, the Pleiadians only with Pleiadians.
Right.
Really what we're talking about here is communities, if I could say that, or just organizations or agendas of multiple combination of races. So, and each one of them have different agendas in mind. They're just like humans. We all have, a mixture of different people that we are grouping and working with. So in that same way, they're a mixture. So on some councils, maybe, you can see these Pleiadians, reptilians, and grays, and their frequency may be a higher frequency. Some of these may be a lower frequency. But I still believe that they're all a part of this matrix universe.
It only seems logical to me to place it within the context of which I witness every day, in the fact that, especially in this time of DNA sequence, that we're so much, people have stories they grow up with where they're this particular, they identify with this particular set of stories, Scandinavian or African or whatever. And then you see that you are so much more. There's a mix going on. And my ponder is that it must be, or it seems logical that it would be this way throughout all that is, that it's all kind of interwoven in a way. Sure, there are pockets where, for example, you go to small areas of Scandinavia and there's not been a lot of influence for hundreds of years, so you have an idea of what those villages are, and you can pinpoint them. So say like the Draconians or Arcturians. Is this
Those bastard Pleiadians.
But am I off the mark there? Is it similar, like this as above, so below concept, that there is mixed as we are?
Yeah, absolutely. And even those Scandinavians that you talk about, I mean, I still feel that they are, a genetic cocktail of many other species, because we're just talking about their current manifestation and this time.
Yes.
So yeah,
Yes.
their DNA can hold many other memory imprints of other lifetimes. So yes, I absolutely think it's as above, so below. We are all a combination of different, genetic make.
And so with this, Solaris Blue Raven talks about this. There's a lot of stuff you're saying that sounds similar to what Solaris does say. And I mean, there are obvious differences, but there's a similarity in kind of, it's the matrix overlay and the mind hacking can happen, say within dream cover-ups and all that. What are things we can do to understand the difference of what is an overlay or a cover-up, as opposed to, and now I'm talking in what we perceive as waking life. How do we parse out what may not be our content and what's maybe interference?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we need to start in our everyday life. What helped me come to those questions of what's real, what's not real for me, is to do a complete detox of all kinds of what do I call it? Any kind of stimuli, like social media or anything that is trying to stimulate any kind of emotion or feeling from me. That's what I did. I completely isolated myself from social media, from movies, from TV, and even music. And I really went deep inside myself. And when I went into myself, I had the question of what am I feeling? What am I experiencing? What's real? And there's a lot of work to be done. I mean, you have a lot of parts of you that are not real. There's a lot of parts of you that you are in denial of. There's a lot of parts of you that you don't want to see, you don't want to forgive, you don't want to acknowledge. There's pain that you don't want to even look at. So that's where the work begins. And you will not be able, I repeat, you will not be able to know what's real and what's not real until you know what's real and what's not real within your own mind. And so only we know what we experience in our life, in our childhood, in our families. And what our society and what our culture has taught us to do is to suppress a lot of these thoughts, these emotions, these belief systems. And so that is the number one place. That's how the compartmentalized is created. The system of compartmentalized is created by creating these kinds of, taboo, like don't go there, or don't feel that, don't feel pain, don't feel sadness. And so that's caused the huge, rift in our connection with our mind and our emotions. So I would say that's the first place to start. You need to get away from all of the stimulation around you that is causing you to feel constantly emotions. Everything's triggering you. Your job, the people around you, the music you listen to, the movies you watch, your partners that go into. You go into these partnerships and relationships that are made to trigger you. All of this is what this is about. So you have to stop having this constant filing of emotional information and start reviewing the information you already have so you can understand what's real and what's not. And once you're done reviewing that, then you're going to have a very clear understanding and everything. It's like this incredible veil lifts and you look at the world from a completely different viewpoint. You have a crystalline view. You can even look through people and their intentions and what they're doing because you understand yourself on such a deep level that you can see straight through all of the falsities around you. So this is such a powerful thing to do, and I really invite everyone to try to get into that, to try that.
That's excellent. So pardon me there. With things that are happening, say, for example, and this is very current and it's got a lot of chatter. It, say
Mhm.
the 5G network.
Mhm.
What do you think's going on? So we can talk on many levels about this. We can talk on the bio level with our flesh and all this. What do you think the higher agenda is? Even though the higher agenda may be actually the lower agenda, what do you think is going on with that? Because it is that really is a big time grid. They have to be set so far apart, very close. And if you visualize it, it's very much like a net
Yes,
with
absolutely.
energy.
Absolutely. And I think that we have been coming to this point of 5G for a long time. It's taken years to get to this point. And the reason why I'm saying that is because what we have not been made aware of is that, we were talking about chemtrails earlier, and any kind of manipulation of weather or, whatever is being sprayed in our air is causing this kind of a network and this kind of a coating over certain parts of the world. And I've also seen that we are being sprayed with a certain kind of a nanotechnology, which is made to alter our DNA.
The smart
And
dust. Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
and so,
Yes.
our body is absorbing this DNA, which is coming into the system to alter and genetically alter the body. And what's worse is that as this 5G is coming out, which is, had been planned a long time, it's going to be communicating with all of the smart dust that's being put into the body and that was being put into the food. It's like this gigantic computer, unified computer is what's being made right now. And we're a part of this. So I think what we need to do, and this is something that's very important to me because I feel like it's completely unacceptable that we are listening to them say that they're going to put out 5G and they've tested this and they've seen birds die. I mean, they did an experiment, I think it was in the Netherlands, where hundreds of birds instantaneously died as they turned it on. That isn't acceptable. And the fact that that's out in the open means that we have to speak up and say no. So to me, what this is like everything in movies, in social media, in our government, that they whisper these little truths to us and it comes in one ear and it goes out the other. And then we just keep going back into our matrix lives without doing anything about it. I think that we need to unify ourselves as a community and start acting like we actually care. So I think it's a matter of us really taking responsibility for our reality that we live in. We're not victims, so we need to start acting like we're not victims, and we need to start doing the proper things to start
Stop,
changing
stop
things.
creating by default.
Sure, exactly, exactly, and I think that we are one big default here.
Totally.
We're not. Yeah, what's going on? Why are we allowing this to happen? It's not correct. So,
Possibly because not everyone here is human
mhm, sure.
or real or whatever you want to call it. Simulated people.
Sure, yeah, and there's a lot of different species walking among us, and in this time. But us, we all have consciousness on different levels. So whoever we as humans, we have to do what we have to do to help our next generation and even ourselves in this limited time of reality that we're in. Like we have to move and change that.
Is okay, and so on the ET thing, or is there a new way? I thought I just heard somebody say something different. That's beyond the point. Is there a possibility that one of or many of the ET races is behind this new grid that has, as you said, has been planned a very long time?
Yeah, so it's a very complex topic, and but to simplify it, as I was mentioning earlier, when I traced back these genetic lines, I realized that even within our government, there are these genetic lines. These one or two very specific genetic lines are the ones that have been running our government for centuries, for a long time, all the way to England, Europe, all the way back to ancient Rome, and ancient Egypt. We have these certain lineages that are managing the information and the manipulation of human race here. And so I believe that, our concept of technology, we believe that our technology is so advanced now, but in reality, our technology is extremely antiquated and we are not really, we're just coming into an understanding of what technology is. So I feel like, um, we have these uh, vortexes that are opening in our world. And I'm talking about CERN right now because they are doing these experiments with splitting of the atoms. And when that happens, we are coming into different dimensional realities. We are opening different dimensional, openings. And through these openings are coming in these different beings and species that are here to shift and move specific timelines. Our timelines are being manipulated and played with all the time. They are being changed here and now. And, we know this because if we look at the timeline of human race, we have ancient civilizations like even in Peru, in Mexico, in ancient Egypt. We have all of these ancient ruins of highly advanced technology that we can't even match to now. So all we have to do is look at our world and look at the traces of the patterns and cyclical patterns of life on this planet, and we're going to start to understand that there's been a pattern here. The moment that there has peaked a high level of technology and advancement, there has been a moment of destruction or clearing or resetting of that information. So this is what we're cycling through. And what we're coming into now is an opening to these higher levels of technology once again, higher levels of technology as well as consciousness, because they come in together, they evolve together. So that's what we're coming into. And so the question is, what are we going to do in this timeline? And knowing and seeing all of these things in our history, how will we act differently? All of these races that are managing all of these movements in our timelines, I have seen that originate within the draconian line. And I have also seen that they are the ones that are managing on the very highest level all of these movements within the government. Now, why do I say that? I'm going to say from my personal experience. Earlier this year, I had experienced a military laboratory experience where I was taken into an underground base, and I had a very terrible experience with two other people that were there speaking at a conference with me, and all of us remember the event. But as we had experienced that, I had bone marrow removed from my lower spine, and through regression, I was able to recall exactly the government, the department that was managing this kind of experiment and what they were doing. And I was able to see that at the upper level, it really is the draconians that are managing these programs. So, these are things that I see from my personal experience that I have lived through, and that's why I speak of them this way. Um, you know, so it's interesting, and that's what I would say. Those are the races that are managing this.
I have, and this will be my last question before.
I have one thing to add to that.
But can I ask this question,
Yeah,
Jerry?
yeah.
It are there specific things one can do? And so I'm talking about tactile things to besides the mental exercise, okay, that one can do to say perhaps set up a a wall of protection around yourself or a warding, like
How does
the
magic
old
fit into it?
right, magic, or within my grandmother would put iron around and stuff like that, that these old folkish tales. Is there anything to any of that, working with crystals, working with metals, mirrors? Is there anything to that?
Well, I mean, there's things that we know about, like for example, using copper to kind of help you, reject the 5G or these EMFs that are coming into your space. And that's very important that we learn how to utilize that technology, and hopefully we learn how to utilize that technology because we understand how the human body works. But all these things are important and good to learn, but I think the most important protection is the power of your mind. I'm going to have to go back to that because your body has an electromagnetic field around it, and it's your job to learn how to control and work with that electromagnetic field. It's your job to learn how to protect yourself energetically. So I think people need to learn how to protect themselves and how to navigate through these things. There's other things like, for example, they've talked about orgonite as a wonderful way to clear the air and help cleanse your EMFs within your energetic space. And I think all of these tools that are out there are things that are worth considering. But the most important tool is going to be the human body. That's what my take on it is, niche, really.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, but the act of doing something is imploring a thought, and a thought and an action and energy behind that. So then you
Mhm.
have physicality of saying we're in shungite, and because my mind now says this, the fullerene and the shungite is gonna to help my own toroidal heal, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, and trust me, I do all of those things too. I mean, I have my shungite, and they do work for me because I can see energy. I can see how they are rejecting, energy coming in. So I know that those things do work. You know. Yeah.
Yeah, and so, I'm always wanting people that don't understand, that might be going, "What are they talking about?" I'm always trying to speak for those people so
Yeah.
that they can get a grasp in on some of this stuff, because it's heady, and it's hard to get into sometimes. The mind doesn't want to suspend disbelief for so many people. So I really do like to uh, have have a velvet carpet for anyone that is starting to have an open mind and seeking further vision into themselves.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for doing so. Yes, you're right.
So this is Jerry. I'm on to you with you had something, and then I don't know if you have
It was,
questions.
yeah, I was just in regards to particle accelerators.
Mhm.
Uh, you're, you know, not young. You're not a kid, So, I mean, the idea of CERN is new, was
Hmm.
new in our lives, right?
Hmm.
It's kind of what I was trying to get at. It's new in our lives, the whole particle accelerator. But today, if you research it, there are 30,000 particle accelerators on the planet.
Hmm. Yeah.
And they've been around since the 20s. And that, some people would call that a Mandela effect or something new. that's been introduced to our reality. So I could totally get behind the whole dimensional shift thing, or bringing timelines or dimensions into our reality through those things could totally be happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up because you're correct. Not many people know how many of those there are. I mean, they just had announced the other day that they opened one in China now. But, these are all over, all over the world, and they have been functioning for a very long time. And you're right. I guess if you want to call it the Mandela effect, it's when this information becomes aware to us again, newly aware, you know.
Right. And the Mandela effect is interesting
Yeah.
in a lot of different aspects, if it's real or not, whatever. The fact that it could be proof of collective consciousness programming reality.
Sure.
It could be that
Absolutely.
enough people remember something one way that the past changes to adhere to that remembrance.
It could be. It's kind of like, is it the chicken or the egg that came first?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And the other point I had, what you're talking about, coming up to a decision point regarding technology and whatnot, and I think you were going towards the transhumanism thing. It just it reminds me a lot of the Atlantis stories, and I always think that, what if Atlantis is now? What if we're living in Atlantis and time's a loop,
Mhm.
and it's something goes wrong and we get reset back to the Stone Age, right?
Yeah, I very much think that that could be a possibility because it's like it's funny how really if you look at what we're awakening to, what has been changing, what has been more prominent is this concept of consciousness has really been coming into everything, even our technology. So we're amounting into some higher levels of information here in the next 10 years. We're coming into some big information, and I think a lot of people are feeling that. So what will happen next? We have all these people that are like, oh, with the doomsday concept, like, oh my gosh, we're going to get wiped out. There's going to be a war. There's going to be something. But again, it's mind over matter, and it's about consciousness and unity right now that we need to focus on through all of
Right.
this.
Those
That,
people, though, it's bad. I think it's bad for people to do that kind of fear mongering, or even hold those thoughts in your head,
yes.
because you can, like, for instance, the whole Nibiru thing, right? Nibiru is going to
Mhm.
destroy the planet, yada, yada.
Yep.
People who, watch tons of videos on that or study it or research it or who are really into it are going to pull that into their reality.
Mhm.
They're going to make it happen. It's like, don't do that.
Yeah, that's correct. Because
I,
again, we're creating on multiple dimensions.
right.
So on other dimensions, it's already happening. you know?
That's right.
Yeah.
Cool. I don't have any questions yet.
There were none. There were none from the chat.
I haven't asked. Any questions, guys? I think everyone's gone.
I don't. When I look over here,
Suzanne's in chat, that's it, but she's probably not even in chat.
I see right now a bunch of people in there.
They're not in there.
Where are they then, Jer?
I don't know.
I think
They come in, they leave a message, and think, oh, they close their window, or I don't know how it works. It's, YouTube magic.
is what we all need today. I don't know.
Okay, here we go. What is your view on time? How do you, how can I phrase this? Okay, I'll just read it. What's your view? What is your view, Geraldine, of time? Your view on time? How would
My
you
view
describe time, I guess?
time. Yeah, well, I was mentioning earlier how, it's nonlinear. It's more like gosh, I guess you can say a circle that's constantly moving. I guess it's the best way I can give you a visual because uh or if you can imagine being a spider web and you are at the center. That's probably a better way. So I would consider time like you are a spider web, you are at the very center of the spider web, and all of these webs are connecting you to multiple dimensional realities that are all connected to you simultaneously in this moment. And at any time, you have the ability to access any one of those little timelines or connections. That's how I would consider time.
All right, I hope that answered this question. No one else has any questions that I could see. Are you done, Nish?
I am. This was
Wait. I got more questions now. Now I think about it.
okay. Cool.
We didn't ask you what your birth sign is.
I'm
An
Aquarius, actually.
Aquarius.
Yeah.
Happy
My
What's your
birthday.
rising?
Leo.
Oh, I'm Leo Moon. Excellent.
Oh, nice.
And are you RH negative?
I am not.
You're
No.
not. Interesting.
No. Yes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I would have definitely thought you to be RH
Me
negative.
too.
What are you trying to say, Nish?
Just that you've
There's a
got that extra to you.
there's a high correlation of, energy workers or clairvoyant people and or abductees, experiencers, what have you, that are RH negative.
Yes, familiar with that. It's very interesting, and I've actually done extensive research on that. It's very interesting, but I'm not RH negative, so we'll see. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, that's all I got.
This,
Nish, you done?
yeah,
All right.
Geraldine, this was excellent. I mean, I had so many questions that I usually ask, and you just as in your descriptions of stuff, you already got round to them, like the soul. Often it's a major question I ask, and you addressed it. And I
Oh,
mean, you did so much of this on your own.
oh, thank you. I'm so
It was
glad.
excellent, and I like that you've introduced not our core audience, but I think a lot of the people that are looking for information, and there there's nothing better, there's no better segue than dreams to get into
Mm,
the idea of all this other stuff that is happening.
yeah.
Because immediately you think dreams, and you're able to set aside the chattering mind of what seems fixed and real and brittle, the daily grind, all that stuff we already talked about. So, yeah,
You're right.
you've
Yeah.
really brought a wonderful new facet at a deeper level to Nox Mente. We certainly have talked ET presence and all that, but not really as much. And so it's something I want to get more into, especially as I'm experiencing some very strange stuff myself, some weird memories and wipes.
Wow. I want to hear about that. Definitely.
Yeah, it's all kind of surfacing now, and it's taking me by surprise. What's interesting is I've been painting these things
Mhm.
my whole entire,
Ooh.
so
Oh,
that
yeah.
my record is there, but they were just kind of not fantasy, but more dreamy, I guess. Like, I don't know. So this has been wonderful, Geraldine. I don't mean to be verbose about saying goodbye, but I really
Oh,
appreciated it, and I
no.
hope
Thank
to
you so
encounter
much.
you more.
Thank you. And I look forward to seeing your artwork sometime. And I would love to hear about your experience. And is it hybridization experience, if I may ask? Or is it?
Yeah, like, just for a real short, I had this dream. I told you about the baby, but it was so
Yeah.
significant and so visceral. I'm
Mhm.
in a regular old, like, plaza. I think they call them malls commonly here, but it was like the old school ones, like in New Mexico and Spain, like a proper. And uh there are a lot of people, and this is the wife, and I start feeling this sensation like I'm going to give birth.
Mhm.
and and then it all kind of fades away, and then I tell myself that this should hurt, and as soon as I say that, I've got these others around me. They're not clear, I can't tell you what they are, but they basically take that away from me, the idea of
Oh,
pain.
wow. Hmm.
And I'm pushing to have this baby, and as its head crowns, I hear it kind of hit the floor, and or the ground, I mean,
Hmm.
wherever it came out, and I wanted to see it. I felt this intense. I cannot describe the connection I had to it. It was really
Hmm.
disturbing, actually, when I woke up. They were gonna take it away. I knew this was happening somehow. But when I looked at it, it was remarkable. It was almost like an albino. And
Wow.
my brother and I are extremely, extremely pale. And I think we're the palest people I know. We're very, you can see all our veins of our skin's that.
Hmm.
And so it was like that, but it even had more of a bluish tint than we do. And its hair was full head of hair that was also like bluish tinted, like old ladies do in Italy with the
Mm-hmm.
tints.
Sure.
And its eyes were remarkable. They were completely super pale, but mesmerizing. Well, it's one eye. One eye was closed, like maybe it got damaged in the birthing process. So there's this strangeness about it, and nobody was carrying on about the strangeness. It was completely normal, and I didn't want to let go of this baby. I did not want this baby to be taken away from me. And
Mm-hmm.
when they did take it away, this is when I was having a heavy emotional reaction. And this was all very Geraldine, this is extremely lucid.
Yep.
I mean, I just can't tell you. And and then I'm wiped back into the plaza and
Oh,
shopping, not a shopper. So it's weird. And so I woke up with that, and I woke up very emotional and upset about it.
mm-hmm.
So I had,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's happening right now.
That is amazing. And I have to tell you that that's quite a very typical dream that we see in the hybridization program. So I actually created a support group at hybridmother.com, and I host them. I host them every 2 weeks. And I'd love to invite you to come in to listen to other mothers that have experienced ET contact. You're going to see a lot of similarities in what you're saying right now. And that is the powerful shift that really has changed my life, because you start to recognize these emotions. It's amazing. So I hope you come, Nish. I think you're gonna really
I
love
want that. Yeah, get that in our little private chat here.
it.
Can you get
Sure.
that to me?
Yeah.
And like I said, this is brand new to me, and I haven't really looked into. I mean, of course, I'm not under a rock, and we talk about lots of woo, lots of it, but this has never touched my life before,
Wow.
and it's interesting that it's coming forth now, and I'm
Mhm.
maybe because I'm open to it. I'm not sure.
Sure, that could very well be. I mean, and the question is, hopefully, if you get regression, how long has this been going on? Because you're going to see a lot of parallels in your life. That's kind of like what happened to me. So I'm excited to see
Yeah,
what happens next.
yeah. I've
Yeah.
had high strangeness my whole life. I have it when I'm in public. You have no idea unless you're
Wow.
walking around with. So I'm accustomed to high strangeness. I'm just not accustomed to this kind of things, like having a baby.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
that experience is completely new. It's blown my mind, and it's kind of made me depressed. It's still got a depressing
Oh,
feeling.
yeah, I completely understand. I had the same thing happen to me when I first met my children. It was so it was paradigm changing. I mean, my world turned around completely.
It's weird how I even have a knee-jerk response. Copy
Mhm.
paste. I'm getting that email here. Uh, I even have a knee-jerk response to saying it out loud like this, especially in public.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
I feel like it's almost too much woo. Does
Yep.
that make sense?
Yep, I understand. Trust me. I mean, and I have to tell you, I mean, over the past 2, 3 years after my regression, even after my regressions are all public, by the way. You guys can check them out. Especially, I would suggest listening to Alba Weinman's 178. That's the number of regression that you'll find. I go through all of my abduction experiences. After re-listening to that, I think I was actually like, my paradigm was shocked. Like I couldn't quantify how it was possible that I had had so many experiences without knowing. So I completely understand the emotional reaction you're having. It's
Mhm.
normal. Just hang in there. The more you understand about the program and what happens, the more you're gonna understand what's happening. And some of what we talked about today will kind of help you process that too, because it gets very intense, when you think about your biological matter being taken out and put into this child that you have no consent or, you know.
But it's
Yeah.
just a
Yeah.
hologram. Who cares?
Sure, sure.
I did want to ask, you were talking about your alien kids. Do you have any real kids?
No, I don't.
No.
No, no, I
It would
don't
be
have.
interesting to see how people deal with their actual children, their 3D kids versus their other extra dimensional kids.
Yeah, there's a lot. I have some. Actually, I was part of a documentary for the hybridization program, and one of the girls that they interviewed for it, she has children that is also an experiencer. The little child is an ET contactee.
Mhm.
So, it gets kind of complicated. I'm telling you guys. It's complicated.
It does seem, it seems very complicated. It's hard to grasp
Yeah.
for, I mean, for me, it's just, it's, coming to terms with it. And like I said, high strangeness my whole life. I'm not a stranger to high strangeness.
Yes.
So, but this whole idea has just taken me, as they say, it shook me.
Yeah.
I have one more question from the peanut gallery here. What does your last name mean?
Orozco? I'm not sure. Orozco basically means something to do with gold.
Yeah,
something
that's what I thought.
It's a Spanish name. But I don't know. I'm embarrassed to say. My first name means mighty with a spear. My second name is a Hindu name. And Italian name and the Bolivian Spanish name. So
yeah, I'm a Gerald, so I know how it goes.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yeah.
All right, great. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
It's
thank you, everyone, for listening and watching with us live or chatting or whatever. Nish, as always, thank you.
Yes, thank you, both of you, and to our wonderful listening audience, and to people that find us fresh and new.
Right. Next week we have Vince I can't say the guy's name. Vince Venzuza's girlfriend, Sabrina Milston.
Oh yes, Vince was the Portland Pacific
North Weird, yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, should be a good show. So anyway, we'll see everybody next week. Have a good one.